My brother cleared out my savings account in order to pay back his gambling debts. My parents convinced me to forgive him. He did something even worse, so I exposed him in front of everyone at Thanksgiving dinner. Trust is a fragile thing, especially when it's shattered by someone you love. I never imagined that my own brother would be the one to betray me so deeply, nor that my parents would ask me to forgive him. But as I sat at the Thanksgiving dinner table, surrounded by family, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. The truth had to come out, no matter the consequences. Growing up, my brother and I were close. We were each other's confidants, partners in crime, and best friends. But somewhere along the way, things changed. He got involved with the wrong crowd, started gambling, and soon enough, his debts began to pile up. I tried to help him when I could, loaning him money, giving him advice, anything to keep him from going under. But it was never enough. The day I found out he had cleared out my savings account was the day I felt my world tilt off its axis. I had been saving that money for years, putting away every extra dollar I could to buy a home, to secure my future. And just like that, it was gone. My brother had used every cent to pay off his gambling debts, leaving me with nothing. When I confronted him, he was full of apologies. He begged for my forgiveness, swearing that he would pay me back, that he would never do anything like this again. My parents, upon hearing what had happened, urged me to let it go. "He's your brother," they said. "Family is more important than money." Reluctantly, I agreed. I told myself that maybe they were right, that maybe this would be the wake-up call he needed. So I forgave him, but I never forgot. Deep down, I knew I couldn't trust him anymore. For a while, things seemed to get better. My brother promised he was done with gambling, that he was getting his life back on track. And for a time I believed him. But then, the phone call started, creditors looking for him, threatening to take action if his debts weren't paid. I tried to talk to him, to find out what was going on, but he brushed me off, assuring me that everything was under control. But it wasn't. One night I got a call from the police. My brother had been arrested for embezzlement. He had stolen thousands from his employer to cover his gambling debts, and now he was facing serious jail time. When I went to visit him in jail, he broke down, pleading with me to help him, to find a way to make this right. I was furious. How could he do this again? How could he drag our family through this nightmare once more? But what hurt the most was realizing that my parents still wanted me to forgive him. They asked me to speak to his employer to see if there was any way to avoid pressing charges. They wanted to sweep everything under the rug, to protect him at all costs. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could they ask this of me? Hadn't I already sacrificed enough? But despite my anger, I found myself agreeing once again. I couldn't say no to them, even though every fiber of my being was screaming that this was wrong. As Thanksgiving approached, the tension in our family was palpable. My brother had been released on bail, and the charges against him were still pending. My parents insisted that we all gather for dinner as usual, trying to pretend that everything was normal. But I knew I couldn't keep up the charade any longer. The lies, the deceit, it was all too much. When we sat down to eat, the atmosphere was heavy. My brother tried to make small talk, but no one was in the mood. The conversation was strained, and I could see the guilt written all over his face. It was then that I knew I had to speak up. I couldn't let this continue. I couldn't let him keep getting away with his actions. I stood up from the table, my heart pounding in my chest. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice trembling slightly. All eyes turned to me, and I could feel the weight of their gazes. My parents looked confused, my brother nervous. "I've kept quiet for too long," I began, my voice gaining strength as I spoke. "But I can't do it anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. The truth is, my brother has been lying to all of us. He's not just a victim of bad luck, he's a liar and a thief." My brother's face went pale, and he tried to interrupt, but I wouldn't let him. "You stole from me," I continued, "and I forgave you. But you didn't stop. You kept gambling. And when that wasn't enough, you stole from your employer. And now you're expecting us to help you cover it up." There was a collective gasp from the family, and my parents looked horrified. My brother hung his head, unable to meet my eyes. "I'm done," I said, my voice firm. "I'm done protecting you, done cleaning up your messes. You need to face the consequences of your actions, and I won't be a part of this anymore." The dinner ended in chaos. My parents were furious, my brother was in tears, and the rest of the family was in shock. But I felt a sense of relief, a weight lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I had stood up for myself, and it felt good. In the days that followed, my brother's situation grew worse. His employer pressed charges, and he was sentenced to several years in prison. My parents were devastated, but they eventually came to realize that enabling him had only made things worse. They apologized to me for asking me to forgive him time and time again, and we slowly began to rebuild our relationship. As for my brother, he had a lot of time to think about what he had done. From behind bars, he wrote me a letter, filled with apologies and regret. He admitted that he had taken my forgiveness for granted, that he had thought he could get away with anything because I would always be there to bail him out, but he knew now that he had been wrong. It took time, but I learned to forgive him not for his sake, but for mine. Holding on to the anger and resentment wasn't going to help anyone. But this time, forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean giving him another chance to hurt me. It meant letting go of the past and moving forward, stronger and wiser. My brother's betrayal had cost me more than just money. It had cost me my trust, my peace of mind, and my sense of security. But in the end, it also taught me a valuable lesson that sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to stand up and say enough. And that's exactly what I did.